Welcome again, dear students. Myself, Dr. Kaleem Ahmed, Assistant Professor, Department of Wildlife Sciences, Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh. As in the previous uh, 3 or 4 lectures, we discussed the 34 biodiversity hotspot. Now, in today's lecture, we will continue to discuss the remaining 2 biodiversity hotspots. These are the biodiversity hotspots that are there in India. The first is Himalayas, another that we are going to discuss in today's lecture is Western Ghats and Sri Lanka. Let's start from Himalayas. We can say the youngest and the highest mountain chain on earth. The Himalayas stretches across northern Pakistan, Nepal and Bhutan. The northwestern and northeastern states of the India, adjoining Myanmar and the southwest China border in the east. The hotspot actually sports globally significant population of several large mammals, including the endangered tiger and endangered Asian elephants, along with smaller mammals and the birds such as red panda and white-winged duck. The rugged and largely inaccessible landscape of the Himalayas makes biological survey in the hotspot very difficult. Can say the significant areas of intact forest are little or entirely unexplored. Thus, we can say many floral as well as faunal taxonomic groups are under studies, and the true extent of the biodiversity is undoubtedly underestimated. Many, in spite of all these things, many unique and diverse human groups are also found in this particular biodiversity hotspots. Nepal counts, we can say, more than 27 ethnic groups, while Bhutans have 3 main ethnic groups. The northeast part of the India has more than 500 distinct ethnic groups. We can say biogeographically, the Himalayas mountain range straddles a transition zone between the Palearctic and the Indo-Malayan realms. Species, we can say, from both the regions are represented in this particular biodiversity hotspots. In addition, we can say geological, climatic and altitudinal variation in the regions are in this particular biodiversity hotspots, as well as the topographic complexity contribute to the biological diversity of the mountains, along with, we can say, east, west and north south axis. We can say in terms of diversity of the different species, there are more than 10,000 estimated species of the plants in this Himalayas biodiversity hotspots, and of which we can say 3,160 are considered as endemic species of this biodiversity hotspot. The largest, we can say, family of the flowering plants in the hotspot is Orchidaceae, with, we can say, 150 species are recorded for this particular family in this biodiversity hotspot. We can say a zone of permanent ice and the rock begins at about 5,500 to 6,000 meters in this particular biodiversity hotspot. In spite of, we can say, these harsh conditions, there are records of vascular plants occurring at some of the highest elevation of the earth. Nearly 980 bird species are also found in this particular biodiversity hotspots, of which 15 are considered as endemic species to this biodiversity hotspots. Some of the avian flagship species includes the endangered white-winged duck, the critically endangered white-bellied heron, and also the critically endangered Bengal florican. There are also 300 mammal species have been recorded in the Himalayas biodiversity hotspots, including, we can say, a dozen of which are considered as endemic to this particular biodiversity hotspot. The endangered golden langur as well as the critically endangered pygmy hog are some of the noticeable species of this Himalaya biodiversity hotspot. The alluvial grasslands of this biodiversity hotspots also support some of the highest densities of the endangered tiger in the world. We can say while the Brahmaputra and the Ganges rivers that flow along the foothills also support globally important populations of the endangered South Asian river dolphin. Some of the world lost remaining population of endangered wild water buffalo as well as the swamp deer are restricted to protected areas in southern Nepal as well as in India. Although there has been little systematic study of the reptiles and the amphibians in the Himalayan biodiversity hotspots have been conducted, but about 175 species have been documented in this particular biodiversity hotspot, which 50 species are considered as endemic to this biodiversity hotspots. If we talk about the amphibian diversity, there are about 105 species are known to occur in this particular biodiversity hotspots, of which 40 are considered as endemic species to this biodiversity hotspot. So, most of these amphibians are actually frogs and toads. Some of the threats that actually this particular biodiversity hotspots are facing, we can say despite their apparent remoteness and inaccessibility, the Himalayas have not been spared human-induced biodiversity loss. People have lived in the mountains of the Himalayas for thousands of the years, but we can say in the recent decades, a greater access to the global market has increased the demand for natural resource in the areas. As a result, what happened? Population are growing in the most productive ecosystem, which are also some of the richest regions in terms of their biodiversity. Today, we can say remaining natural habitat in the Himalayas biodiversity hotspot is very patchy. The steadily increasing population in the hotspot has led to extensive clearing of the forest and grasslands for cultivation and widespread logging. Large areas of remaining habitat in the hotspot are highly degraded due to the human activities. Overgrazing by, we can say, domestic livestock including cattle and domesticated yak is widespread in the lowlands and the alpine ecosystems. The flora of, we can say, these fragile alpine meadows have been overexploited for the traditional medicines. We can say the conversion of the forest and grassland for agriculture and settlement has led to large scale deforestation and habitat fragmentation in Nepal and Indian states of Sikkim, Darjeeling and Assam. Fuel wood collection and non-timber forest products extractions, both for, we can say, domestic consumptions and export, has inflicted severe damage to some forest ecosystems in this particular biodiversity hotspot of Himalayas. We can say also some unplanned and poorly managed tourism has also led to the environmental deterioration of this particular biodiversity hotspots. Other threats to the biodiversity in this biodiversity hotspots and forest integrity includes mining, construction of the roads, large dams and pollution from the agrochemicals are some of the serious threats that this particular biodiversity hotspots are nowadays actually facing. Another biodiversity hotspot is Western Ghats and Sri Lanka. We can say the Western Ghat region of India is centered on the range of the mountains that runs along the west coast. Although the area accounts for less than 6% of the national land area, is contain more than 30% of all plant, fish, herpetofauna, bird, and as well as mammal species found in this country. Due to, we can say, varying effects of early monsoon as well as high mountain regions, this hotspot is home to rich endemic assemblage of the plants, reptiles and amphibians. Some of the iconic species of this particular biodiversity hotspot, or some of, we can say, some of the iconic mammal species of this particular biodiversity hotspots includes the endangered Asian elephant as well as the endangered tigers, or some of the species which are found in this biodiversity hotspot. Wide-ranging and we can say flagship mammal species such as tiger and elephant have attracted significant conservation efforts in these biodiversity hotspots, both by Indian government as well as by the several conservation non-governmental organizations. But we can say relatively little is known about the distribution and the conservation status of the smaller mammal species, particularly the small carnivores as well as the rodents, or we can say mesocarnivores of this particular region. In addition, we can say to rich biodiversity, the Western Ghats are home to diverse social, religious and linguistic groups. The high cultural diversity of the rituals, customs and lifestyles has led to the establishment of several religious institutions that strongly influence public opinion and political decision making process. We can say the presence of the hundred of sacred groves and sacred landscapes in the regions bears testimony to society's commitment to the conservation efforts. Many species of higher plants and vertebrates are still being discovered in this particular biodiversity hotspots. Further, we can say the region is center of the diversity for some of the world most economically significant plants such as mango, banana, black pepper as well as nutmeg. It is also estimated that there are 4,000 species of flowering plants that are actually known to occur in the Western Ghats biodiversity hotspots. About 1,500 or nearly 38% are considered as endemic to this particular biodiversity hotspot. We can say the Nilgiri mountains are one of the most important centers of the speciation for flowering plants in Western Ghats, with 82 species restricted to this area alone. A total of 508 bird species have also been recorded in this particular regions, including 324 resident species, that is around 64%. We can say there are also about 144 species of aquatic birds. Many of them are from the western coastlines. The central parts of the regions harbor the highest diversity of the bird species. 16 species are endemic to the Western Ghats region, and most of them are occurring in the areas of southwards of the Goa. Many of the endemic species are, we can say, are obligates of the evergreen forest and shola grassland systems of this particular biodiversity hotspot. Approximately 157 species of the reptiles are also found in this particular biodiversity hotspots of Western Ghats. Of these, 50% are considered as endemic species. Approximately 126 species of amphibians from 24 genera are known from this particular regions, with new species frequently added in this biodiversity hotspots. The Western Ghats has the highest level of the amphibian endemism in India. We can say the distribution within the region varies from extremely widespread, like the skittering frog, which is found throughout South Asia, to highly restricted, like the endangered Malabar toad found only in the southern portion of the Western Ghats. Similar, we can say to the other biodiversity hotspot, Western Ghats are also facing lot of threats. Some, we can say, the one is the livestock grazing within and bordering protected areas by high density of the livestock is a serious problems because it causes habitat degradation. Another is human wildlife conflict. As Western Ghats exists within an intensely human dominated landscape, human wildlife conflicts are very common in this particular biodiversity hotspots. Very high human population densities in several parts of the hotspot further actually increase the intensity of the conflict. Another is extractions of the forest products. Human communities living within and adjacent to the protected areas in the Western Ghats hotspot are frequently dependent on the extraction of non-timber forest products to meet the diversity of the subsistence and the commercial needs. Another is fuel wood and fodder extractions. The extractions of the fuel wood and the fodder constitute a significant and pervasive consumption use within the Western Ghats. Overall, we can say the extractions of the wood from both live and the dead plants represent a serious threat in this particular biodiversity hotspots that actually negatively affecting canopy gaps, regeneration, stand density, basal area as well as the population structure of this particular biodiversity hotspot. Agro systems we can say in the Western Ghats are today dominated by tea, coffee, rubber and monoculture of the various species, including the we can say the recently introduced oil palm. We can say large scale planting of the coffee in the Western Ghats began in 1854. Over the years, we can say the plantation of the cash crops have displaced extensive patches of the natural forest throughout the Western Ghats and are frequently associated with the encroachment of the surrounding forest areas of this biodiversity hotspot. Another we can say, so we need to have give certain priorities to this particular biodiversity hotspot. The certain priority that has been recommended by the Conservation International in this particular biodiversity hotspots include to promote partnership to identify, evaluate and advocate for suitable mechanisms that incorporate critical links. Therefore, we can say one is biological corridors. That another things that is very important for this particular biodiversity hotspot is that support from the civil society to establish partnership with state agencies to implement science-based management and conservation of the priority sites in Mysore Nilgiri corridors. We can say another we can say monitor and assess the conservation status of the globally threatened species with an emphasis of on lesser known organisms such as reptile and fishes should also be given priority in this particular biodiversity hotspot. And we can say support efforts to conserve some of the critically endangered and endangered species through the creation and implementation of the species recovery and the management plans are also needs to be given priority, so that the lesser known species are going to be protected in this particular biodiversity hotspot. There is also need to evaluate the existing protected area network for adequate globally threatened species representation and assess the effectiveness of the protected area types in the biodiversity conservation. We also need to build a constituency of the civil society groups working across institutional and political boundaries toward achieving the shared conservation goals described in the ecosystem profile. 36 biodiversity hotspots that are formed throughout the world, and we have discussed all the 36 biodiversity hotspots in the 5 lectures. Some of are there within India and some of them are distributed throughout the world. With this, dear students, we end today's lecture, and in the next lecture we will continue to discuss some new interesting topics of biodiversity conservation. Thank you very much.